Coming up on a newscast, North Korea launches multiple missiles off its east and west coasts. One flew over the NLL and fell close to South Korea's territorial waters near Ulleung. An air raid alert was raised for the residents. President Yoon convened an emergency NSC meeting. He ordered swift and stern measures to ensure Pyongyang pays a clear price for its provocations. Mourning continues in South Korea. People visit joint altars for the Itaewon stampede victims installed across the country. And a meeting in Central Disaster Countermeasures and Safety HQ, Seoul's PM, vowed to ensure accountability for the incident. Hello and welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let's begin with the top story at this hour. North Korea launched more than 20 missiles on Wednesday. One landed in waters south of the de facto maritime border for the first time. The regime also fired around 100 artillery rounds in the afternoon, despite warning from the south. Bae-eun-ji starts us off.
South Korea's military said Wednesday that North Korea fired around 25 missiles off its east and west coast, including missiles that appear to be several short-range ballistic missiles and surface-to-air missiles. The firing began at 6:51 a.m. when South Korea detected 4 unidentified tracks from its radar systems. They later turned out to be short-range ballistic missiles. Then at 8:51 a.m., North Korea fired 3 short-range ballistic missiles off its east coast, followed by at least 10 missile launches from its west coast at about 9:10 a.m. One of the ballistic missiles fired toward the East Sea landed in international waters south of the northern limit line, the de facto maritime border between the two Koreas, just 57 kilometers from the South Korea's eastern city of Sokcho. The Joint Chiefs of Staff said this is the first time that a missile has landed close to South Korean territorial waters since the two Koreas were separated.
This is very unusual and unacceptable. Our military declares that we will be responding firmly.
In response, at around 11 a.m., South Korea's military fired back, using 3 precision-guided air-to-surface missiles toward international waters north of the NLL. They were fired from the country's F-15K and KF-16 fighters. Despite warning, at around 1:30 p.m., North Korea started to fire around 100 artillery rounds toward maritime buffer zones in the East Sea that's been said to ease military tensions. South Korea's military said this is a clear violation of the Inter-Korean Agreement signed in 2018. But the North didn't stop there. At about 4:30 p.m., it also fired what appears to have been 6 surface-to-air missiles toward the West Sea. After firing back, South Korea's military said it's sending a clear warning to the North to show the capability and readiness to precisely target its enemy. It also warned that North Korea is fully responsible for the situation, as they're the ones continuing to provoke despite warnings. Bae-eun-ji, Arirang News.
President Yoon labeled the North's missile launch into the sea south of the NLL as an effective encroachment of South Korean territory and vowed that North Korea will pay a price. Moon Gan-young reports.
North Korea's latest barrage of missile launches, including one that landed close to South Korea's territorial waters for the first time since the 1945 division of the peninsula, is tantamount to violating South Korea's territory, said South Korean President Yoon at an emergency National Security Council meeting immediately following Pyongyang's launch Wednesday morning. Yoon ordered swift and stern measures so that North Korea pays a clear price for its provocations.
We take North Korea's latest provocation quite seriously, as it was an effective act of territorial encroachment by a missile intruding the NLL for the first time since the division of the two Koreas. The last time North Korea carried out a military provocation across the NLL was its shelling of the Ulleung Island in November 2010, but this is its very first with a ballistic missile.
South Korean warplanes fired 3 air-to-surface missiles into the sea north of the maritime border in response. Seoul's top office said the president made clear that no attempt by Pyongyang would create a rift in South Korea-U.S. alliance or the South Korean society, and ordered the military to maintain full readiness against any possibility of additional high-intensity provocations by North Korea. President Yoon and members of the National Security Council strongly condemned North Korea for threatening peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula and made clear that all responsibility for raising tensions by violating UN Security Council resolutions and 2018 Inter-Korean Military Tension Reduction Agreement lies with the North.
We also find deplorable that the North carried out such provocation during our time of national mourning.
156 people lost their lives in a tragic crowd surge in the capital Seoul on Saturday night, and the nation has been observing a period of mourning for the victims and those affected throughout this week. 문건영, Arirang News.
South Korean authorities sounded air raid sirens on Ulleung. It's the first time the sirens have been raised in the island. Local residents were quickly sent to shelters. Kim Dami has the details.
Air raid sirens blared across South Korea's Ulleung Island for the first time after North Korea's latest beta missile launches. The sirens sounded for 5 minutes on Wednesday at 8:55 a.m., prompting residents to evacuate to underground shelters. The air raid alert was lifted and replaced with a security alert as of 2 p.m., telling people to stand by and be ready to take precautions. There have been no reports of damage or casualties. Air raid alerts when the sirens are sounded are issued when an enemy attack is imminent or in progress, and security alerts when an attack is expected. South Korea's Safety Ministry issues such warnings when requested by Air Force Operations Command. Since 1983, air raid alerts have been issued a total of 13 times. The last time was 6 years ago on Baekneon-do Island and Daecheong-do Island when the regime fired a long-range ballistic missile. Wednesday's provocations also put a halt on some air routes as well as at tourist sites in Gangwon-do province. Flights with layovers in Japan have been canceled for roughly 24 hours until about 11 a.m. on Thursday. Goseong Unification Observation Tower and DMZ World Eco Peace Park cleared out the sites and sent visitors back home. Kim Dami, Arirang News.
The U.S. and Japan both condemned North Korea's latest provocation. This came during a phone between top diplomats of both sides, calling the missile launches unprecedented. They agreed the regime violated multiple UNSC resolutions as well as the 2018 Inter-Korean Military Agreement. The ministers emphasized the launches were inhumane. It happened at a time of national mourning in South Korea. Earlier, Japan's PM told reporters that the missile launch at an unprecedented pace is completely unacceptable. According to its defense ministry, Tokyo launched a protest through North Korea's embassy in Beijing. China's foreign ministry expressed hopes related parties prevent the back-and-forth situation from worsening. After North Korea's provocation, Seoul's finance chief held an emergency meeting to discuss the possible impact on the financial market. During the session, Chu Kyung-ho ordered relevant officials to carry out a thorough review and closely monitor the market for the next 24 hours. The nation's benchmark index closed at 2,336 on Wednesday, up about 0.07% from the previous day. The won closed at 1,417.4 against the greenback, the exchange rate rising by 0.21. People from across the country continue to visit memorial altars nationwide to share their sorrow and pay respects to those who lost their lives in the Itaewon crowd crush. Our Kim Bo-kyung is standing by at one such venue in downtown Seoul. Bo-kyung, what can you tell us?
Well, hi, Daniel. I'm out at Seoul Plaza in front of City Hall, which is where one of 67 memorial altars has been set up nationwide. This place is just a 15-minute drive from Itaewon, which is where Saturday night's tragedy happened. President Yoon again paid a visit here at around 9 a.m. with members of his cabinet and officials from the presidential office and laid a chrysanthemum on the altar before bowing his head in silence. This is President Yoon's third visit since the altar was set up. His first was also here at Seoul Plaza with First Lady Kim Gun-hee on Monday, and the second on Tuesday was at Noksapyeong Station, just right down the street from the site of the Itaewon incident. We've been seeing mourners coming in continuously since early morning, laying flowers and leaving messages of condolence. As of Wednesday evening, more than 70,000 people had come to Seoul Plaza and the other memorial sites set up in the 25 districts of Seoul. On the first day, there were more than 19,000. On Tuesday, more than 30,000, and today, as of 5 p.m., p.m. more than 20,000. For those who would like to visit, their operating hours are posted on each district's website, though I can tell you the one at Doksaphyeong Station is open 24/7. The altar at Seoul Plaza runs from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day until Saturday, November 5th, that is the last day of the week-long national mourning period. Visitors have included diplomats from other countries, and for example, I also spoke with a Canadian tourist who'd just been in Japan and then decided to pay her respects when she arrived in Korea.
It means that it's much loss, so many young people, and representing the future of the world. So that's why we are here, to express our very, very sorry and sadness to those young people.
We found out actually when we went to a church service on Sunday in Kyoto, so we're still in Japan, that this horrible accident had happened in Seoul, Korea. It's so sad. I feel so bad for the families and the people that were just out having a good time and, ready to celebrate. They hadn't been out for so long because of COVID. And then to die in such, horrible situation we're watching.
Well, Bo-kyung, it has been a very somber week for everyone. Can you give us more information on the casualties?
Well, Daniel, there is no change in the number of death tolls yet. According to Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters, as of Wednesday 11 a.m., the death toll stands at 156. Out of them, 130 are Koreans, and the rest of 26 were identified as non-Koreans. 101 were women, and the rest were men. Most of the dead were in their 20s. Funerals have already been held for 68 people. Meanwhile, the number of injured has gone up to 172, an addition of 15 more from the previous update at 6 a.m. 33 are reportedly in serious condition. Visitors to the Seoul Plaza altar who are suffering from psychological trauma or who need medical treatment can get help at temporary centers set up right next to the altar. One medical booth is open from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. until this Saturday, but they say their volunteer service could be extended depending on the situation.
For those who are suffering from severe trauma, we offer mental health services, and for other medical issues as well, I can help with basic medical care and treatment.
Well, that's all from me for now. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, Bo-kyung, thank you for being out there for us. We appreciate it. Moving on to other stories now, the Central Disaster Countermeasures and Safety Headquarters held a meeting focusing on finding the causes of the Itaewon tragedy and the failure to prevent it. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo said the government will ensure those responsible will be held accountable. The chief of police and several other high-profile officials issued public apologies. Lee Si-woo fills us in.
South Korean Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has told a meeting of the Central Disaster Countermeasures and Safety Headquarters on Wednesday morning that the government will look to hold to account those responsible for the tragedy that occurred in Itaewon.
I asked the police to conduct a thorough investigation and communicate with the citizens in a clear and detailed manner. The government will look to hold those responsible for the Itaewon incident accountable.
He added there will also be comprehensive measures to improve the police response system. Han said the fundamental duty of the police is protecting citizens' lives and wealth, and not doing so betrays their trust. The comments come a day after the National Police Agency released details of citizens' phone calls to the police. According to those details, the first call to the police informing them of overcrowding occurred at around 6:30 p.m., roughly 4 hours before the deadly crash. A total of 11 reports were made before 10:15 p.m., the start of the disaster. Commissioner General of the Korea National Police Agency Yoon Hee-gun acknowledged the inadequate police response and made a public apology. This was done at a meeting at the National Assembly on Tuesday on the Itaewon incident. At the same meeting, the Minister of the Interior and Safety, Lee Sang-min, also made a public apology. Meanwhile, Seoul Mayor Oh Se-hoon on Tuesday apologized for the incident and vowed to devise measures to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Lee Si-woo, Arirang News.
South Korea is providing support to the families of the 4 nationals killed in the Itaewon stampede. The bereaved families will each receive 20 million won in compensation. That's over $14,000 US, in addition to the 15 million won for funeral costs. Family members who travel to Korea will also be eligible for up to 70,000 won, or roughly $50 for each night of lodging expenses. To apply, they must fill in an application, submit a death certificate from the hospital, and hand in their bank details. Applications can be made at the Yongsan-gu District Office. The money will be dispersed after a document review by the Foreign Ministry and the Korean Embassy in the applicant's home country. Despite the South Korean media's strict standards on blurring sensitive images, the nation was exposed to unfiltered real-time images and videos of last weekend's tragedy in Itaewon through social media. Some experts warn that even indirect exposure to such images can have a traumatic effect on those watching. Choi Min-jung explains further.
On the night of the Itaewon incident, thousands of people were there at the scene, while people across the country were able to witness events as they unfolded online. In light of this, there are grave concerns that this has led to a form of collective trauma in South Korea. And this is mainly because of social media. As soon as the incident happened, images and videos of the chaos and suffering were posted online without being filtered.
I think it was the severity of the photos more than anything. Like the fact that you're seeing a dead person on a casual platform. It's not a normal thing. It's not a day-to-day thing.
Experts say seeing something happen, such as the tragedy in Itaewon live through the media, can be as harmful as when encountering the incident live in person.
Experiencing the incident secondhand can be traumatic enough for a person. We call this media-induced trauma. Academically, it's proven that people can also experience post-traumatic stress disorder following indirect exposure to disasters.
Experts say the most common psychological symptoms are anger, anxiety, and fear. They advise people to avoid watching the photos and clips of what took place for those who experience prolonged signs of traumatic stress. Some people actually have a tendency to re-watch disturbing images, thinking it will help them overcome their fears by getting used to them, but experts do not recommend this method.
People have the desire to control something when they're suffering. They try to rewatch the thing that scared them until they are able to take control and feel numb. But this is not an effective method. Once you are scarred, you don't make an even bigger scar. You have to let it heal.
It's natural to feel traumatized after a tragedy like this, whether the experience was first or secondhand. Regardless of South Korea's social stigma on mental health, experts say people should actively seek out for support and the care they need to overcome what could potentially become a lifetime trauma. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Even with global inflation, supply chain disruptions, and rate hikes in major economies, South Korea managed to attract record-high FDI pledges last year. Invest Korea Week 2022 kicked off on Wednesday to show why the nation is a hot destination. Ji-young takes us there.
Despite uncertainty in the global economy, South Korea in the first 9 months of this year saw more foreign direct investment pledges than ever before. Last year's investment pledges from overseas also hit an all-time high, recording $29.5 billion, up more than 42% on year. So will this upward trend continue? The level of interest seen at Invest Korea Week 2022 hints that it will.
Global companies invest in all semiconductor fields to strengthen cooperation with Korean companies, and recently, various companies have announced plans to invest in Korea not only for manufacturing, but also for R&D.
The annual 3-day event held in Seoul is the first face-to-face meeting of its kind since the start of the pandemic, with some 300 companies from home and abroad exploring investment opportunities. Invest Korea Week 2022 shows South Korea's attractive foreign direct investment environment and opportunities in key high-tech industries, particularly in batteries, biotech, and chips. An official at IBM says it already has a strong relationship with South Korea, with many of its chip products being manufactured in the country. He added, with its national strategic initiatives, the U.S. is actively looking for more partnerships with South Korea.
Of course, one of the most significant pressures on the market right now are the national strategic initiatives such as the CHIPS Act. This is causing both challenges in the short term around how to manage a shift in sourcing and in partnerships towards friendly countries away from traditional legacy partners. And then, of course, this presents tremendous opportunity.
It's not only semiconductors. One expert in foreign direct investment says South Korea's high-tech industries got away with the recent global supply chain crisis as they are favorable investment destinations.
And the determinants are very simple. You need to hire capable people to do what you want them to do. And in Korea, there's quite a lot of well-educated workers, and workers who are disciplined and can show up on time and do what's necessary and learn new skills. So the people is a big thing. You need a reliable infrastructure to get things in and out, and Korea has a very good infrastructure. And lastly, you need to have a government that you can trust. And Korea does have quite a good system of rule of law and reliability.
The Trade Ministry says recently South Korean firms have announced $1 trillion worth of investments in various future industries, ranging from electric cars, semiconductors, AI, and batteries over the next 5 years. The government says it'll actively support foreign investors and reform any unnecessary regulations. 엄지영, Arirang News.
South Korea's biggest energy exhibition begins. The three-day event is held with the Net Zero Expo for global industry insiders to discuss ways to achieve carbon neutrality. It's also a place for companies to showcase their latest technologies. Itaewon provides a sneak peek of the 2022 Korea Energy Show.
The world is currently facing the biggest energy crisis since the oil shocks in the 1970s. With ongoing natural gas supply shortage problems and geopolitical risks, the International Energy Agency says the crisis is expected to last for years. South Korea's biggest energy exhibition, the 2022 Korea Energy Show, kicked off on Wednesday, where industry experts share information on renewable energy products and technologies. This year's event is held along with the 2022 Net Zero Expo and International Conference on Carbon Neutrality of the Industry, all hosted by the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy. More than 350 companies are taking part to showcase their latest products and technologies. LG Electronics exhibits highly energy-efficient home appliances like AI air conditioners and washing machines.
The air conditioner we have here has adopted an AI engine. It automatically detects what kind of space it's in and finds the most effective air conditioning function to consume energy efficiently.
Hyundai Motors' hydrogen-powered electric vehicles and drones, and SK Ecoplan's energy transition solution technology, which can transform renewable energy into electricity and hydrogen, are also on display. To achieve net zero carbon emissions, an official from the Korea Industry Intelligentization Association says a digital transformation is needed.
A digital transformation is a must when it comes to tracking our carbon footprint. That's why we're trying to achieve green by digital. Other than R&D development, digitalization efforts are needed to effectively measure and evaluate actions needed for net zero.
Not only companies, but citizens too can contribute to achieving carbon neutrality, just like this energy bike, which can generate power using kinetic energy. The government also sees the event as an opportunity to encourage people to participate in reducing energy consumption. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
Temperatures will take a steep dive starting tomorrow daytime. For Seoul, highs will drop to 12 degrees Celsius tomorrow, which is about 5 degrees lower than today. With the frigid wind chills, conditions will feel colder than the actual reading, so make sure to wrap up extra warm. With the cold air, fine dust will ease off for most regions and clean air will be restored. The entire nation will see air quality standing in the normal to good category. But for those across the coastlines, do expect gusty winds until this Friday. All coastlines surrounding the peninsula will see violent winds gusting as fast as 10 to 16 meters per second. Please secure any items that could get blown away. Inland regions will be chilly for the morning hours. Lows in Seoul will be starting off at 7 degrees tomorrow. As for the daily high, Seoul will be reaching 12, Gwangju 19, Busan will be making it to 22 degrees. No rain is in the forecast for the time being, but with the cold temperatures, dry spells will intensify across the nation, so please take extra precautions against fires. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
And that's all from us. As always, thank you for watching.